Hello and welcome to Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast that tries to keep it real and really interesting when it comes to wine. Normally on the pod, we are very much an anti-whining zone, but we thought it might be fun today to shake things up a bit and share some stuff about the wine world that just gets under our skin, grape skin and otherwise. The quirks that irk us, annoying things about the wine scene that are frankly hard to swallow. We hope you'll agree with our gripes and maybe even have some of your own that you'll share with us. We are the two Marys who like to eat, drink, and be merry. I'm Mary Babbitt.
I'm Mary Orland. We do love wine, but there are some things about wine and the wine industry that baffle us or just piss us off. So we've compiled a list of our top 10 wine pet peeves, perhaps some of the same things that you wish would change. Plus, we've got a plea to the wine industry to take action on some of these points. They can take them or leave them, but we hope they take them. We'd love to know if our pet peeves resonate with you, our listeners, and we'd love to know what your pet peeves are that aren't on our list. So be sure to DM us on social media or leave a comment on our podcast platforms. So be sure to let us know. At Mary B, we've made our list. So here we go. Sorry, not sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. I agree with that. All right. You want to start us off the top of your list?
At the top of my list, wax bottle tops on wine bottles. I know.
I know why. She's got the scars to prove it on this one.
I do. Now I know how to properly open a bottle that has a wax top. Basically, just take that waiter's corkscrew, the one that has the worm, and just go right into the wax, and it'll go straight through the cork and pull it out. Now, it can be a little messy. Sometimes the wax is softer and easier. Sometimes it's a little bit harder and it breaks off all over the place. So once you get that cork out, be sure to wipe off any residual wax. You don't want any wax pieces getting into your wine. But I know they look great, and I know that they're even a little bit more environmentally friendly than the tin foils. But it's just such a extra step and hassle to deal with that I don't know why they just can't go away.
And when you say you put the corkscrew in and pull it right through, it's still, you got to kind of muscle it out because now you got another layer you're trying to pop through. And sometimes it's enough for me just to get the cork out. So when you're adding a layer and sometimes a thick layer of wax, it gets hard.
It does. It does. Why do we even have it? For prestige, for the look. Again, some people say they find it to be more environmentally friendly. And I was doing a little bit of research into that because I was wondering, can you recycle a wine bottle that has wax on it? And turns out you can. And apparently during the recycling process, the heat of that process just melts the wax, so it's not an issue. Whereas if they're trying to recycle bottles that have the tin capsules on them, they have to be manually taken off. I mean, you could take it off at home before taking it to the recycling center, but otherwise, who's going to do that? So somebody at the recycling center has to do that. So hopefully that is happening. But I would like to see these wax tops just go away.
Well, you have to tell how you cut yourself and you had to go to the ER and get the stitches.
It was years ago, and it was the night of the Oscars, and I can't remember exactly what year, but the Oscars had just finished, and I had a lovely bottle of dessert wine that I wanted to share with my husband. It had a wax top. First time I'd ever tried to open a bottle with a wax top. And I thought, well, I can just cut the wax off with that little knife that's, the little blade that's
on the corkscrew. Yeah.
Not a good idea. It slipped and I sliced a big gash in my thumb, had to go to the emergency room. We were there several hours before it got stitched up. So
and probably missed the best picture, best actor, best, actress awards.
Yeah, we missed the very end. So it was not worth it.
Well, goodbye, wax tops. We don't need you. You do look pretty, but what's the point, right? We don't need it. So that's okay. I like that pet peeve. My pet peeve, I have a kind of a group of them that are related to when you go out to a restaurant and order wine.
Oh, sure.
And so I'm going to call, I have what, I think I've got about four in this bunch, but I'm going to do two, I'm going to lump them together as two. But
Okay.
they're restaurant wine related pet peeves. My first being a limited selection of wines by the glass at restaurants and often crappy options at those restaurants and really high end restaurants. They'll have a nice selection. But wines by the glass are kind of they feel like the ugly stepchild of the restaurant world that I think restaurants sell a lot of them. And many people like me, I just want a glass of wine with my dinner and I don't want to have to invest in a bottle, or my husband might not want wine and I do. So a glass of wine fits the bill, but it's such a bummer when you go out to eat and you're choosing between not so awesome options. And I get tired
Right.
of that.
I know, me too. And there's always Chardonnay and Cabernet on the list. I'd like to see something a little bit more interesting besides Sauvignon Blanc,
Mhm.
Cabernet, Chardonnay, Merlot. Um, and I know it's a challenge with restaurant staffs having to scale back in many cases, especially since the pandemic. A lot of wine directors were let go, and now the wine buying decisions and curation of those lists are up to general managers who are juggling many, many tasks. But it would be nice to see maybe a more thoughtful selection. Um, so whenever I go out, here's a tip that can help you decide whether or not you're even going to have a glass of wine is that bottle's probably open anyway. That's on the by the glass list. So ask for just a little taste, maybe choose two to see if there's one that you like or not. I always say I'd like a little taste just before, I make the investment in the glass. And usually it's never a problem.
Agreed. You taught me that a long time ago, and it was a game changer for me. Um, I just find too often I don't really like either.
I know.
But
So restaurants, you're
oh,
missing out on a sale if you just,
oh.
if you could just up the quality a little bit.
Well, and it's hard. I know, restaurant work is keeping margins that make sense is difficult,
Mhm.
but for most of us now, when we go out to eat, we're spending a lot of money anyway. So it would be nice to just be able to have a decent glass of wine to go with it, with your meal. And speaking of me eating and enjoying wine at a restaurant, when you get a good glass of wine at a restaurant that you're looking forward to, but the glass has a stink to it or a funk. And this has happened to me in tasting rooms as well. And it's really nobody's fault because both tasting rooms and restaurants use dishwashers to get big machines to get the glasses cleaned. And sometimes dishwashers, as we know from our own homes, get a funk, but it
Mhm.
can ruin a good glass of wine if you get a funky glass. And I've had to say, and I hate being this person, but like, gosh, could you just pour this into a different glass? This one's kind of funky. And they're always really nice about it and apologetic, but it happens, and that's a bummer.
It does. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing worse than getting a stinky glass of wine. But
Yeah, right.
you
Well,
know,
and you were telling me today you don't even wash your wine glasses with soap because you don't want the soap smell to taint your glass.
right. No, I feel very strongly about that. So if you just use super, super hot water to wash your glasses by hand, or I put them in the dishwasher and without the soap and just run it through the regular cycle. And that's always better. Um, Anytime somebody's at my house and they're offering to help clean up or do the dishes, and we get to the wine glasses and they reach for the soap, I'm like, no, no. But
Don't
I've
do it.
but I've been to other people's homes where they serve wine, and you know they use soap, and why wouldn't they? Because I'm a wine geek, so I think about these things, but
Mhm.
most people don't. But I remember one time, like the the scent of the whether it was Dawn dish detergent or something, whatever it was, it overwhelmed the wine completely.
Ooh, yuck. And you can't say at someone's home, like, gee, I don't love the smell of this
I know,
glass.
I know
Right.
exactly.
All right.
So
Well, you have a pet peeve that's related to ordering wine when you're out.
I do. So I would love that the descriptions on the wine list are a little bit more informative, instead of just, the name of the wine, whether it's Cabernet Sauvignon or whatever, and the price. Um, sometimes you're lucky if you get the region,
Mhm.
and hopefully the vintage. Usually the vintage is there, but sometimes the region's not there, or it's a blend, but they don't list what grapes are in it. And I kind of want to know. And then when I ask the wait staff, um, they don't always know either, and then they have to go find out. So it'd just be maybe a little, more helpful to both the servers and the diners that you put a little bit more information on the list about the provenance of the wine and
I,
what's in that blend.
I totally agree. And I'm going to take it a step further and say, I'd love just to know, break it down for me. Basically, is this a dry white? Is
Mm,
this, give me some descriptions that I can work with that are simple and not overly frou-frou, but that kind of help me decipher what this wine might taste like. And I find that's true on bottles of wine as well. I often look at the back of a bottle and it may tell me where the grapes are grown and the year, la la la. But I also just kind of want to know sometimes, is this going to be sweet? Is this,
mhm,
does this have a mineral taste to it? Or, just some like universal truths about the wine. Or in the case of a restaurant menu, I would love to get you'll love this Albarino with seafood, or if you're ordering chicken, try this, or whatever. Just make it fun and make it
yeah,
dumb it down for me.
yeah,
I appreciate every effort to dumb it down for me.
right. Or if you love Sauvignon Blanc, then you'll like this, or try
Exactly.
this. Yeah,
Exactly.
and take a little bit
All
of the risk out of it.
right. All right, here's another one. How about when you're at a restaurant and your wine is served at the wrong temperature, too warm?
Oh,
It's
mm-hmm,
when you've ordered white or a rosé or whatever, you want a nice chill to it, especially because it's going to sit there on the table and warm up. So if it
mm-hmm,
doesn't start cold, it's not going to get colder. And then it's even true for red wines when they're just too warm and you don't get the essence of the flavor. I like a slight chill on my red, not cold,
mm-hmm,
but I want to, like, I guess you would say, like, almost like a cellar temperature on red wine, as opposed to this has been sitting on a upper shelf in the kitchen or whatever temperature.
mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. No, especially in these hot months, and where I live here in Palm Springs, like the minute you pour that wine, it's already heating up, before you even get a chance to drink it once it's poured. So yeah, temperature is crucial.
Well, and I often people say, is it okay to put ice in your wine? It's okay to do whatever you want, but
Mhm,
if you can put a couple ice cubes in your glass of wine, and just don't and you don't have to water it down by not leaving it in there too long. It's a 4-second rule, or you use kind of a swirling rule.
mhm,
You swirl it around a bit and then remove the ice, and
mhm.
that's often enough to chill it down to the temperature you want, and you haven't watered down your great vintage. It still has the flavors you want without feeling kind of tasting like ice cube.
Yeah, exactly. That little bit of water that melts from the ice cube is not going to really affect the taste of the wine at all.
Right.
But yeah, just remember to remove the ice cube. And, if you can always ask for some ice, or you can ask for an empty, just water glass at the restaurant. So you have somewhere to deposit that ice cube that you're
Good
fishing out
point.
of your wine.
Good point. Yes. All right, you've got another one about having wine served to you. That this one I find funny, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, there are some restaurants, it doesn't happen that much, but when you order a glass of wine, they bring you that glass filled to the rim. And
And
for
this bugs
me,
you. This bugs you.
it's,
Like I would be like, "Hallelujah, finally! Oh, giddy up! I'm going to have a great time tonight."
well, I would much rather have a little slightly bigger glass of wine so I can swirl the wine around so I can get all the aromas. That's the reason,
But that's where you just got to take a few swigs off the top.
I guess. But yeah, if I observe around, the wine is coming out in a really, a smaller glass but filled to the rim, I'll often ask, do you have a slightly bigger glass? Or if they bring me, a white wine in a smaller glass, I often say, can you put that in a red wine glass for me? I just like to be able to swirl it more.
No, that's a good point. I get that. And the swirling releases aroma, and that's another
Hmm.
way to enjoy your wine. So I get that part of it. But
Yeah.
like when I saw that, I was like, wait, who would ever be opposed to a generous pour?
Well, I'm never opposed to a generous pour. I would just like it in a generous glass.
Okay. I gotcha.
Like there's some places you go, especially if it's like a country club restaurant or whatever. It's like there's the regular pour, then there's which is like 6 ounces usually, and then there's the members pour, which is 9 ounces.
Oh, oh, so fancy.
I know, it's so
Remember.
funny. It's like a glass or a glass and a half.
Right. I've seen that in restaurants as well, not at country clubs, but just, you can choose which size you want.
Yeah.
And then sometimes if I've chosen the larger size, I get the look from the waiter. You're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. The tip's gonna be good.
Okay, how about when you get a glass of wine out at a restaurant and it's clear that the bottle it's not fresh. You mentioned you kind of touched on this earlier, but like it's been maybe sitting around too long or open too
Mhm.
many days before, and
Right.
you're not getting the freshest glass. And that's when like if I'm at a restaurant and I see him open the bottle of wine at the bar before the waiter brings it over to my table, I'm always like, oh yay, I know at least it's fresh and hasn't been sitting around because not
Exactly.
everybody's preserving wine appropriately. And I think, depending on how busy the restaurant is, some do sit open. They're not going to pour out that bottle of wine just because they didn't sell the rest of it.
Right, right. But if you send the glass back, then they're gonna have to pour it out anyway.
True,
But
true.
yeah, no, it's this is a challenge, of course, and unless there's a preservation system in the restaurant or at the bar, you know, and the by the glass is can be challenging. But so if you get a glass that's obviously kind of past its prime, one thing I've done is say, this wine doesn't taste that fresh to me. Do you know how long the bottle's been open? And the server may or may not know. And oftentimes they'll go back to the bar and ask, and they'll say, that's been open for 2 days. We'll get you a fresh glass.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice.
And I
And
have a
I hope I would have the courage to say that, but
Well, I
yeah,
think I think if you just say, this doesn't taste as fresh as I've had it before, and it doesn't taste as fresh to me as it usually does.
mhm.
I'm wondering how long this bottle's been open.
And the truth of the matter is, you're going to feel better about your dining experience if you get what you want and you don't
Hmm.
feel like, dang, I spent, $20 on that glass of wine or whatever, and it was kind of lousy.
Yeah, and I think where it's really more noticeable is with a glass of sparkling wine or champagne,
Oh, yeah.
or cava or prosecco. Those bubbles aren't as lively as they should be. And
Hmm.
so one of my girlfriends here taught me that she always says, she'll get a glass of champagne, but she'll say, I would like this from a fresh bottle, if that's at all possible. And usually they accommodate her.
Yeah, for sure. I'm all for that, especially with sparklings.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because I mean,
Yeah,
that's half the experience, the bubbles. So if you're not
right.
getting bubbles, all right, you got another one? I've
I,
lost count. I'm sorry.
I
I've
know.
lost count.
Okay. So this is number 2 on my list, heavy bottles.
Wait, number
So
two, I'm already like down to, I think, like four.
that's okay. We're not keeping track. And we haven't had any wine yet. But yeah, heavy bottles. And I know I'm not alone in this, but sometimes I'll get a bottle, it's a very expensive bottle and usually a red wine. And I can do arm curls with it because it's like, oh, it feels like it's, a 3 pound weight or even a 4 or 5 pound weight sometimes. They're just so heavy.
But that's supposed to
And
be fancy or something.
well, that's the perception. And so this is just I equate this to when screw caps first came out, and people were like, "Oh, that screw caps are just for cheap wine. I'm not going to have a good quality wine under screw cap." And boy, has that perception changed. But it took years for that perception to change.
Hmm.
So I think the perception is, and it has, well, we've seen it. Wineries put their best top of the line wines in heavier bottles because it feels more expensive. It feels like it's higher quality. But in truth, the bottle weight has nothing to do with the quality of wine inside. And Mary B, I don't know if you know this, but the biggest contributor to wine's carbon footprint
Hmm.
is glass. It's the
Really?
manufacturing of glass. So the gas furnaces that manufacture the glass, the shipping of the empty bottles to the producers to fill, and then shipping those full bottles to their destination, whether it's a restaurant, the tasting room, retailers, or to an individual home. So, and the
Wow, that's
bottle,
fascinating.
yeah, a lot of that has to do with the weight of the bottles. So typical wine bottles can weigh anywhere from 500 to 550 grams, which equates to about a, a little over a pound each empty. And
Hmm.
there's even some wine bottles that are much heavier. Like there was a winery in Sonoma that were using bottles that weighed around 650 grams. Not long ago, they've reduced that to 480 grams, so less than a pound.
Hmm.
But and why is it important to have lighter weight bottles? Well, the heavier the caseload on a truck, on a ship, whatever, the more energy it takes to move that weight. So
Right, right. That makes sense.
yeah, so you're burning more gas, you're needing more energy just to get the wine from one
And is the
place to
industry
another.
responding to this?
It is, it is. It's, and I think there have been a couple of really important voices out there demanding, as much as we can demand, lower weight or lighter weight bottles. One very well-known voice is Karen McNeil. She is one of the top wine writers in the United States and in the world.
Mhm.
She's a friend of the pod. We've had her on the pod, but I think it was last year she came out with a notice that she would no longer review wine in heavy bottles.
Wow. All
Um,
right. Go Karen.
and then the British wine writer, critic, and master of wine, Jancis Robinson, has also come out against heavy bottles.
Hmm.
So, having major voices like that come out and say that really, really helps. And other companies that are more environmentally, or not, all companies are possibly environmentally aware to a certain extent, but others have really come out and made an effort. And I was talking about this one winery in Sonoma, Inman Family Wines. They're the ones who reduced their bottle weights from 650 grams to 480 grams. There's a Washington producer I read about recently that has a bottle weight of 379 grams. So, even, definitely less than a pound now. But one of our favorite producers, Bonnie Doon, has come out just in this May of 2024, with a wine they're calling Carbon Nay. And that's referring to reducing the carbon footprint of this rosé wine.
That's got
And
Randall Graham all over it, that name. I love
absolutely,
it.
absolutely. So they say it is 6 times lower carbon footprint, and that's due to the fact that the bottle, when it's full with the wine, only weighs 83 grams. Now, we were talking about your average bottle being 500 grams. That's huge. It's about 3 ounces. And
Wow.
again, compared to a pound, or, a pound and a half, that's a huge reduction. They're saying that it's 5 times lighter than your average glass bottle.
This is
And
incredible.
yeah,
And the wine, it can hold wine and the wine stays fresh or whatever?
yes. So how are they doing this? So when you pick up the bottle, it feels like cardboard. It's actually recycled paperboard,
Mm.
94% recycled paperboard. but inside there is a food grade container, and together with that and the exterior wrapping, they're both fully recyclable. And
Wow.
that's how they're
Amazing.
able to make it so much lighter. And when you're thinking about shipping, wine is shipped in case boxes, 12 bottles per case box. A case of the Cabernet is 24 pounds versus the average case of wine of 40 to 50 pounds. So again, so for shipping wine, it's going to take a lot less energy. And just even think about the practical things, the people who are lifting those cases, whether they're, on the bottling line and they're packing them up and loading up a pallet, or if they're receiving the wine and they're having to carry the cases in, it's a lot lighter for everybody involved
Mhm.
too. And so Bonnie Doon is not the only one. We had Laura Catena on as a guest recently of Catena
Mhm.
Vineyards in Mendoza, Argentina, and they had just come out with a lighter weight bottle as well. And Kendall Jackson, the Jackson family of wines, they have come out with some lighter weight bottles. So has Scheid Vineyards down in Monterey County,
Sure.
another
Yeah.
friend of the show. So
Well,
there's
that means,
movement.
yeah, there's momentum building on this. And who doesn't love something that helps people, helps the environment, and hopefully at some point it might help the bottom line on what we're paying for wine if there's fewer costs involved. I'm not going to hold my breath on that aspect of it, but I do think I do applaud these efforts to make a more sustainable bottle of wine.
Absolutely. And so if you're curious, the Bonnie Doon Cabernet is available at Whole Foods. They launched on May 1st, and it's about $17 retail. But it's the wine is very crisp. It's light, fruity, perfect summer wine right now.
Well, I can't wait to give it a try. I'm dying to get a hold of that cardboard bottle and just check it out. And the wine sounds delicious. So thanks for that one. That pet peeve with kind of a positive spin. I like that. Um, okay, how about, well, speaking of bottles, how about a screw cap bottle? One of my favorite things about the screw caps are
Mhm.
the fact that in my fridge, my always overcrowded refrigerator in our house, I can actually lay it horizontally in the fridge as opposed to needing one of the upper shelves that are sometimes maxed out with, for taller things. So, being able to lay it horizontally and save it in my fridge. But sometimes those screw caps some are cheaper than others, I've noticed,
Mm.
and they leak or they kind of break apart as you're screwing them. So like little bits of the aluminum start to stick out. And
Oh
I don't
yeah.
like that either. So I'm calling for either a higher quality screw cap or just maybe more watchfulness on the from the manufacturers on how they're making these things and when they're utilized when you're screwing it on and off. Because I will have a bottle of wine in the fridge for several days, and so I'm going to screw it on,
Mhm.
screw it on, and I need it to not leak. And I don't always have the ability to save it vertically in my fridge. A lot of people save vertical bottles on the door of their
Yeah.
fridge,
Mhm.
but I am like condiment heavy on my door. So I need to be able to lay this bottle down. And if I lay it down and it leaks, it bugs me.
Yeah. And not there's not that many door compartments on a refrigerator that are tall enough to put a bottle of wine.
It's true. And if you add so then the cork takes it up another couple of inches,
Mhm.
and so the screw cap does appeal to me for my really crowded fridge, but I
Yes.
don't want them to leak. So that's my
Yes.
pet peeve. I'm
Yep.
going to call that number 3.
Okay. So there's something else to fix. um, so my next pet peeve is styrofoam shippers. And I'm talking about the inserts that when you order wine, whether it's a case or 2 bottles or whatever, 1 bottle, and it's shipped in a cardboard box, but the liner is styrofoam or
Mm-hmm.
the styrofoam peanuts, which I haven't seen those, but I'm still getting shipments with the styrofoam inserts and drives me crazy.
It has to stop. We can't recycle styrofoam. It's
Mhm.
terrible for the environment.
Yep,
And we have other options now. There's great cardboard inserts that
absolutely.
work. And yeah, we just have to say no more to
Yes.
styrofoam.
So please, please don't send out styrofoam anymore. I mean, I wish it could be banned,
Yeah, me too. Me too.
but
But I think wineries need to look at the impression they're making when they send out styrofoam and someone opens it up and doesn't feel good about that.
exactly. I will say it has gotten better, but it just needs to go away.
Needs to go away. All right. Something else that needs to go away. People who are snobby about wine and the way they talk about
Mhm.
wine and perhaps assume everybody knows the top wine houses in France or Italy or all of the vast wine knowledge that they've accrued in their wine drinking lifetime. Or they maybe use super ridiculous wine descriptors like sweaty saddle, um, mousy, tractor shed, forest floor. I hate all that
Yeah,
stuff. And
I
I
know.
can't even, it takes me so out of the zone because I'm like, wait, what's a forest floor smell like? And how am I supposed to smell that in this glass? And it just, and it just sounds so pompous and uh, unrelatable. I'm all for the relatable things.
Hmm.
And that just, I mean, you're good at descriptions and you can really call out aromas that you smell, but you don't get so in the weeds that it gets weird.
Sure. And, we had a great conversation with Meg Maker not long ago, just even talking about the language of wine and how, it's so based on a certain, basically white European culture and the foods that are common to this culture, and it
Mm,
doesn't take into account anything from Asian cultures, South American cultures, Native American cultures. So if you didn't grow up around a European centric diet or garden or anything like that,
mhm.
how can you relate?
It's so true. So
Yeah,
true.
so
And so some of that stuff just needs to go away.
absolutely.
Do you have a most ridiculous description that you've heard
Oh
before or a
gosh.
favorite that you hate?
I've sweaty socks has been one.
And like, and who wants to keep drinking at
I
that point?
know.
Like, you say sweaty socks to me, I'm done.
That horse barnyard,
Oh,
and
yes.
and I know that they're talking about a wine that probably has this thing called Brettanomyces, which is a bacteria that can get into wine in certain degrees, and it's not harmful. It just when it's at higher concentrations, it smells kind of foul, but
Mm,
it's very common in certain European wines. But
I
you
see.
know, um, but
The other
yeah,
thing that bugs me is the when people talk about kind of the hang time on when you take a sip of wine and it has a 60-second finish or a 90-second finish. And that just to me just sounds so ridiculous and over the top, as if I've never seen anyone with the stopwatch, like, how
yeah.
many more seconds do I get on that sip? I'm still tasting it.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, we talk about the length of finish, but I mean, I think that's going to be different for everybody. We all taste differently, we all smell differently, and I feel like it's so much pressure. It doesn't have a long finish for me, but it does for somebody else. Like, am I wrong? Am I not
Well,
picking up something?
and I guess the only potential benefit is that it slows down your next sip because you're trying to wait and see like how long it lasts. But beyond that, it just is sort of like you either enjoy the wine or you don't. And like
Yeah,
and I guess if it lasts longer in your mouth, maybe you enjoy it more. I don't know.
yeah.
It just sounds ridiculous to me. So that's one of my pet.
Sure, sure. Well, another of my pet peeves are I talked about the wax tops. I also am not a big fan of foils. Again, it's
Mm.
another step to slowing, slowing down, opening that bottle of wine, making it a little bit more complicated. And so you might even wonder, why do we even have foils on the bottle? Is it just decorative? And today, yes, that's true. It's pretty much just decorative now, but centuries ago, um, when there was problems with mice, rats, and wine cellars, um, these rodents would chew at the corks, and that's not a good thing. So
Right.
to protect the corks, the producers came up with foils to protect, or capsules to protect the corks, and they, and I'm sure that's one reason wax tops came about too.
Hmm.
But and back in the day, those foils used to be made of lead. Lead foils were phased out and banned completely in 1996. But if you have an older bottle, say from the 60s, the 50s, the 40s, there's a good chance that that could be a lead capsule. So if you're dealing with that, proceed with caution.
Mm.
On older vintage, take the foil off completely. Don't let it come in contact with the wine. Wipe the neck off really well and just get rid of it.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
But
but
you're saying we don't need these foils at all.
I really don't. And I know a lot of winemakers who don't use them anymore. And I actually like being able to see the entire cork through the neck of the bottle. Um,
Oh.
and especially if a winery is paying to put their logo not just on the end of the cork, but on the side, it's kind of nice to see that.
Hmm. But yeah, I guess the thought is that foils dress up the bottle in some way.
Yes, yeah, and that's true. And it's tradition. And I've heard all those arguments too. But then again, you've got to have either that little knife blade on the corkscrew, which I really don't like, or you
Hmm.
have to have a foil cutter to take the foil off. And it can be a pain. And sometimes they don't come off so easily with a foil cutter or the knife. And it's just like, and it's an added expense for the winery and to the wine. So it seems like, and
Yeah. Do we care that much that yeah,
yeah.
eliminate that expense, eliminate that extra effort?
Mhm.
And I don't think anyone would even notice. If that was
Um,
the norm, I think that's
yeah.
what we expect to see.
And as I was mentioning earlier, not, when it comes to recycling, they've got to take the foil capsules off anyway.
Hmm.
And so that would be one less step involved in the recycling process. So maybe more would get recycled. I don't know.
And
I'm
if you
just,
I think if wineries communicate with their customers about why they've made a change
mhm,
and the positive aspects of the change, like we took the
mhm,
foils off because it was just one more expensive step we didn't need. It was another thing to have to deal with in terms of disposal, whether recycled or not. And it wasn't necessary. So we eliminated it. And we
mhm,
thought you appreciate that, you
right.
know?
There are some wineries, some companies that have started coming out with or developing foils that are mostly all aluminum, because some of the foils have other materials in them that make them not able to be recycled. And how's a common person supposed to tell? I don't know.
Hmm.
So let's eliminate that step altogether and the
Yeah,
confusion about it.
so true. We don't need it. Okay, here's my final pet peeve. Bum, ba, bum, bum, bum.
Mm.
It is people who wear perfume or cologne or scented lotions to a wine tasting or a wine event.
Hmm.
Um, it is, we're not there to smell your cologne. It's people want to smell wine and they want to, get the essence of what that wine is showing in the glass. And if you're
Hmm.
with somebody who's just overdone it and whether it's hairspray or perfume or whatever, it kind of wrecks it.
Yeah, I mean, and I am a huge perfume lover, but even I don't wear perfume to tasting rooms or any wine event or wine dinner, whatever. You have to be really conscious of that. And even like hand lotion, like I have some hand lotions that I love, but they
Mhm.
are strong and that's gonna,
It's
interfere with something.
Well, it's true. And in some ways, I think when it's stuff that we wear, we kind of we go a little bit nose blind to it, or we forget
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
other people smell it too. And so I think that that's it's just something to be thoughtful and mindful about. It's it's not what people want to smell when they're doing wine tastings.
Hmm. So true. So true.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. My last one is it is time for plastic corks to go away forever.
Yep.
You find them on inexpensive bottles, but nowadays there are so many cork manufacturers that are making a lower cost cork composite stopper. Like we
Mhm.
had the folks from Amarin in Portugal on our show recently, and one of their biggest markets are these composite corks that are made from particles, and they're less expensive than the traditional natural cork
Mhm.
that is punched out of the cork bark. But so those are available to folks who are making wines at a much lower price point. And also, they're so hard to get out of a bottle.
Yeah.
And if you're using a cord, and I like to use a Coravin quite a bit, and it's gotten to where I have to take the foil off anyway to see what kind of cork is in that bottle, because I've had an incident or two where I didn't do that, put the Coravin in, and my needle crumpled because it
Yes.
was a plastic cork. I'm like,
Mm.
ah, and that happens more on some international varieties, but it's just a worldwide plea. Just get rid of them. They're not environmentally friendly. They're not recyclable. They're really not reusable. At least, I have a whole big glass I fill with corks once I've used them, which I take to a recycling place. But sometimes you just need a cork for another type of bottle stopper, and you can totally reuse that. The plastic ones, no.
Yeah. No, just like the styrofoam. We don't need it anymore. No more.
Mm-mm,
Bye.
mm-mm. Yeah, goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Hey,
Well, okay,
hey,
Mary.
goodbye.
Yeah. I feel better. We got some of that off our
Yeah,
chest,
I do
like,
too.
and I feel quite certain that changes will be immediate, that the response from our listeners and the wine world will be immediate. We can count the days until styrofoam is gone and the plastic and the
I
wine is
know.
served at the right temperature.
Exactly. But in all seriousness, there are some things that do need to change, and sometimes, well, we know in the wine industry, change is slow to come, but it can be done. It can be done, and we're seeing companies move in this direction. We're seeing things happen slowly, which is good, but we need more adaptation of these better practices, of the lighter weight bottles, of getting rid of styrofoam and plastics in the whole production.
Well, and
And
if you can help the environment and your bottom line at the same time, that's a win-win. And I
yeah,
think when consumers get behind these changes and support them,
yeah,
like the cardboard box of wine from Bonnie Doon, that tells winemakers or wineries that they're doing the right thing and the public is ready for it.
exactly. And that's really what it comes down to, is when you have the demand. So our listeners out there, go demand these things if it's important to you. You're the ones who can affect the change in the wine industry much more than Mary B and I can. We
Absolutely.
can be a voice and a conduit and encourage it, but you need to do your part.
And if you have other pet peeves, we hope you'll share them with us.
Yes.
We're always up for you got a rant, as long as it's not about us, you
Yeah.
know.
But yeah, no, seriously, we would love to hear from you. And because you may have a pet peeve that we hadn't even thought of before. So we want to know, and we'll put the word out.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's going to wrap up this edition of Sip Sip Hooray, the podcast. And we thank you as always for listening. And we encourage you to rate and comment on our podcast and it just share it with your friends because all of that makes such a difference for us.
It does. And we would love for you to check out our show notes on our website, sipsiphooraypodcast.com. We also have a Substack where we'll post this episode and more information. So just go to Substack and search Sip Sip Hooray podcast. You can subscribe to our Substack newsletter, so you will get a notification as soon as a new episode drops, and also some extra content that we put on Substack.
All right. Well, Mary Orland, thanks for doing this with me. This was fun, and I hope we change the world one glass of wine at a time.
That's what it takes.
Okay, well, until next time, cheers to you.
Sip, sip, hooray.
Sips, hooray.